Hello and welcome to Williston's annual budget presentation, and we have a few things to talk about today. I'm Terry Macaig, Chair of the Williston Selectboard. Next to me is Deb Beckett, who is the Town Clerk and Treasurer, and next to her is Rick McGuire, Town Manager, and then Erik Wells, our Assistant to the Town Manager. We thank you very much, Channel 17, for hosting this show, and our town meeting starts on Monday, March 4th at the Williston Central School at 7 o'clock in the evening. Voting on the budget and special articles and also for the town offices is the following day on March 5th. Voting will be held at the Vermont National Guard Armory in the middle of the village of Williston. And the polls are open from 7 in the morning till 7 in the evening. We have a lot to cover today. The town budget, a bond resolution, and 6 articles relating to the proposed charter changes. So let's start out with Rick and tell us about the budget this year.
Well, thank you, Terry. Any conversation about the budget really has to focus first on services, because really that's what's the most important part of why we even have a budget. I took the opportunity to actually count the number of services we had, Terry, and you'll be maybe surprised to learn that we have about 180 different services that we provide. So it's more than just what you would normally think of. I actually have a slide here that shows some of the major ones that people are most familiar with. Police protection, fire protection, library services, but there's far more than what those services would imply. I think we're going to have Erik talk a little bit about the budget details, so I'm going to turn it over to Erik.
Thanks, Rick. So first we're going to look at the cost of services. And the budget this year is about $11.5 million. This is an increase of just about $384,000, and that's a 3.4% increase. And we've got a slide here that looks at an expenditure comparison. It shows graphically where tax dollars are being spent throughout the town. So well over 55% goes towards public safety related services, as you can see, and then the rest of the breakdown is showed here. So to balance those expenses, we have to look at our revenue sources throughout the year. Almost half the revenue to support the town's services is in the form of property taxes. 25% is generated through our local options tax. A reminder, this is a volatile tax source, which means it can fluctuate up and down as the economy goes up and down. So then the difference can amount to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Our remaining 25% is from a variety of other sources. So the question is, what will this cost me? Our current taxes are based on $100,000 of value is $266. Taxes for the next year, based on the proposed budget, are estimated at $270 per $100,000 of value. That's an increase of $4.
So, Erik, you mentioned, of course, that there's only a $4 increase, but I think there's another piece to this story that I kind of wanted to tell. I did an analysis of the various increases the town has had over the past 3 years, and found out that based on a home that's valued at $400,000, the taxes in 2017 was $1,000 and $1,060. And the following year it remained the same. The year after that there was a slight increase, and then there's an increase also proposed for next fiscal year. But altogether, the total increase over that 4-year period was only $20, again, based on a $400,000 value home. I think the other piece of good news is when you look at our tax rate, and this, again, municipal taxes compared to the various municipalities throughout Chittenden County, Williston is near the bottom. We're just above the town of Charlotte, and all the other communities have tax rates that are much higher than Williston. And Charlotte has lower tax rate, but they also offer far fewer number of services that we provide here in Williston. So, Erik, that's a quick summary of the budget that involves Article 6. But if people want to dig deeper into the numbers, where would they turn to?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. If someone wants to go on our town website, we have a number of resources to look at the budget and everything related to town meeting. The easiest path to find that is go on our homepage, and you'll see under News Briefs a link for Town Meeting 2019, Follow that link and you'll find a number of resources, videos, and a number of documents. Or feel free to stop by the town hall, send someone in the manager's office an email, or just give us a call. We're happy to discuss this with you.
So thanks, Eric and Rick, for that. There are several other important articles for consideration by the voters in this March. And one of those is the bond vote for 2 new fire trucks. And the Select Board has talked at length about this proposal and recommends the proposal to you. Rick?
Well, this has been somewhat controversial already. The Select Board did spend a lot of time talking about the various issues here. And so I've prepared a couple slides here that I think will hopefully explain this issue a little bit better for people. Currently, we have a number of pieces of large equipment. We have 1 ladder truck, 3 pumpers, and a brush truck. And from the chart that is on your screen, you can see that over the years, the amount of a number of major pieces of equipment has decreased. For example, in 2010, we had a total of 7 large pieces of equipment. That was reduced a few years later to 6. And for the current year, we have only 5. The proposal that is before the voters is actually to reduce that once again to 4 major pieces of equipment. That is the proposal. Now, each truck that we have generally lasts 15 to 20 years. So it's a significant life that this equipment has. The equipment's also very expensive. It's not just the truck that you're buying, it's tons and tons of equipment that goes with each truck. And each truck, I would also say, performs multiple functions. It's not just a single function that each truck does. And finally, the process for replacing these trucks is a long one. It can take 2 to 3 years to actually complete the process from start to finish in the purchase of one of these trucks. So I think that's important to consider when you're looking at the whole process and the whole issue behind whether or not we should buy new trucks. We currently have the trucks that we're hoping to replace. One is out of service now. And so that will continue to be out of service and we'll get rid of it. The other 2 trucks are currently in service. One is a ladder truck and the other is what's referred to as a pumper. These trucks are nearing the end of their useful life. One is currently 18 years old. The other is 16 years old. And if you add 2 to 3 years onto that, one will be 21 years old if you're adding 3 years, and the other will be 19 years. So both of them will be near the end of their useful life at the time we actually go to replace it. But you have to plan these replacements far in advance because of the long delay or long process in actually replacing these trucks. So you do need to think ahead. So the 3 trucks that we're replacing, if you were to take the replacement value of those 3 trucks, it would be about $2.2 million. And of course, by reducing it and buying less expensive trucks, which is what the plan is, we are asking for only $1.4 million. And that amount will likely be reduced by the replacement. If we go to sell those trucks after we buy the new ones, then we'll be able to get some value from that and reduce the amount that we're going to have to borrow. So that can't be factored into what we have to ask for because we don't know what that amount's going to be. But we do anticipate receiving some money back when we sell the old piece of equipment. The newer trucks have a number of advantages. And there's a couple pictures on the one slide here that shows what the new trucks might look like. The first is a Quint truck, which by its name implies it performs 5 different functions. But the important piece of that is that both of these trucks actually, these trucks are lighter trucks than the current trucks we have. They are shorter in length. They have a shorter wheelbase, which allows them a shorter turning radius. And of course, lighter also means less wear and tear on the town roads. And the pumper truck, which is significantly smaller than the pumper truck it's replacing, also is a 4-wheel drive truck. And that allows for even more flexibility during the winter months like we're having now, where the trucks might be challenged on a steep slope. The four-wheel drive allows it to maneuver more readily in bad weather. So I think that's a quick overview of the reasons behind there's the replacement. The current trucks are in dire need of being replaced, and the new trucks will perform a wider range of functions. And so we're asking voters to support this important replacement of equipment. Oh, the other piece that I wanted to share is our current debt, because when you borrow money, it does affect your total debt load. And this chart shows the current and proposed debt service levels. And if you look at the year 2019, you'll see that the current debt load is about the same as it will be in 2023, which is when the first payments for these two new trucks would be most likely to hit the books. So it's not a significant impact. Between now and 2023, we do see the debt going down somewhat, and of course after that they would also go down, because as you pay off the debt, each year the amount that you owe will also go down. So that's kind of a quick look at the impact on our debt service. So I think, Terry, might be a good time now to start talking about the charter changes that are being proposed, because there's a number of them.
There are.
And these are kind of important issues, especially a couple of them. So I think I'm going to start the discussion, and we're going to ask Deb Beckett to weigh in, because she has some unique knowledge about a couple of these issues. There are 6 articles that are being considered. And the town's charter was actually first adopted in 2003, and it's been amended twice, or once in 2007 and the other in 2009. The town charter is a way for the town to institute procedures and processes that are somewhat different than state law allows for. In Vermont, the state of Vermont, the state is actually ruled by something called Dillon's Rule. And this is actually a judicial interpretation of the law. And it says basically that a municipality can only exercise those specific powers that are expressly conferred to it by the state law. And so if the state law doesn't say you can do it, then rather if the state law says you can't do it, then you can't do it. The town charter allows you to specify what the rules are that an individual town can do. And so we're constricted by state law for the most part. I guess I wanted to talk a little bit about the adoption process. Currently, the process involves an adoption that requires 2 public hearings, which have been held. It also requires that the Selectboard approve it, and then eventually it goes to the voters, which is why we're talking about it now, because the Selectboard did approve it in January. And it goes to town voters for their consideration, and then once the voters approve it, then it has to go to the state legislature for a final approval. Now, usually the state legislature approves the changes that are adopted by the towns, but I think there have been several state situations where the state legislature has not made those changes or approved something different than the voters changed. I know it's in the minority, but it can happen. And of course, it also adds some time to the whole process. And that can be a concern under certain circumstances, for sure. So let's talk about the first article, which is Article 8. And Deb, as the Williston's town clerk and treasurer for the past 20 years, why is the proposed change that's described in Article 8 important?
I think it's very important at this point. Well, first off, I do want to say that the possibility or the proposal to eliminate any elected position is one that it cannot be taken lightly, and I don't think we are doing that in any way, shape, or form. There's been a lot of thought into this. The position of the town treasurer has changed drastically, I think, over the last 20 years. We're not in the days anymore of maybe 1 or 2 bank accounts. and cash receipts coming in over the counter and being put into little envelopes. It has gotten much more complex than that. Currently, the town treasurer, we manage 29 separate money market accounts, 7 CD and investment accounts totaling about $12.6 million, plus the general operating and payroll accounts. Our primary goal for these funds are really to maximize the interest realized on these accounts while still maintaining liquidity. And I think between that and regulations that have come down the pike over the last number of years, banking regulations in particular, it really is important that whomever is in this position has some background in finance, in business, in accounting. As an elected treasurer, there are no requirements. Somebody could just put their name on the ballot, say, I want to be treasurer, come in and have no background whatsoever in finance or business. And I think that would be a detriment to the town, especially with dealing with so much in the funding.
I would say that over the years, we've been very fortunate to having your expertise in guiding that piece of the town's finances, and our audits have always been very good, and obviously that's something we want to retain.
Absolutely, thank
that's
you.
an important piece of our town finances. There's another piece to this, though, Deb. The proposal here is to change the treasurer's position from elected to appointed, but it's also in the budget, there's money for another change that affects this position.
Moving that from pretty much a part-time to a full-time position. Currently, my position as the treasurer, I'm the elected treasurer and elected clerk. We've had the combined position for, I want to say, about 50 years. Arlene DeGree, my predecessor, was clerk and treasurer for about, she was that for about 30 of her 36 years, the combined positions. By separating this out, it will give a new treasurer, an appointed treasurer, will have, it is absolutely a full-time job between all the duties and responsibilities. It is a full-time operation right now. I have myself and a senior assistant treasurer who does a lot of the work, and combined it's well more than any one full-time position.
Well, thank you for that. Now, the next article that we wanted to talk about is Article 9, and this one's a little bit different than, do you want to just briefly explain what that's about?
So Article 9 would allow the town to vote at some future date to change the clerk position from elected to appointed. That is different, and what this is doing is it's simply allowing the town at a future date to make the decision that they want to go to an appointed clerk, rather than having the legislature make that decision through the charter changes and whatnot. This, I would say, I would hope not to see come on the ballot here
In the future.
In the future,
Yeah.
but it allows that to happen should we decide.
Right. So it's not really changing anything that we have in place now, other than taking the state legislature out of the decision process.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And actually, that same issue applies to another article we'll get to in a minute here. But I want to briefly talk about Article 10, which is a proposal to eliminate the positions of pound keeper and town service officer. Both of these positions have essentially become obsolete over the years. In fact, I can't remember ever having a pound keeper, but it is something that's in our charter. And I also think that by eliminating these, it doesn't necessarily prevent the select board from appointing someone to these positions. For example, town service officer, Terry, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the board did appoint someone to that, even though under state law it is not required any longer.
We did, that's correct.
Yeah, and it's a position that does have some function. So, but the proposal here just takes it out of the charter as being a required position and allows the select board the flexibility as to whether or not they want to have someone fill that position. Then this next article, Board of Listers, is kind of similar to the one on the town clerk, because really the only intent of this article is to take the state legislature out of the process. And I would agree with your sentiment that you said on the town clerk. The same is true of our Board of Listers. Our Board of Listers performs a really good function in Williston. It's not true in all other communities, but in Williston it has been very true. We have an excellent board and they really do a great job. So this proposal is not to eliminate that board, it just takes the state legislature out of the process. So if at some point in the future the town does want to eliminate this board, then they can do so without having to go to the state legislature. And the town constable is another one. That's Article 12. This is a position that is, for the most part, become obsolete over the years. It does perform a little bit of a function, but that function that it performs is performed by others. The sheriffs, for example, can perform some of the functions that the constable provides. The proposal here just takes it out of being a required position within the town charter. Again, it allows the select board, in fact, I think it provides the select board to make the appointment rather than having it as elected. And given the fact that most of the duties of this position have kind of gone away over the years, I think it kind of makes sense to have it change the nature of the position. And then finally, there are some technical corrections. The most obvious one is the start time for our annual town meeting. The charter currently states that the meeting must start at 7:30 p.m. And I think for years and years and years, the meetings started at 7. So that's not consistent with our charter, and I think it might be good to modify our charter to make it consistent with what our current practice is. So the charter change provides some flexibility in setting that start time for town meeting. There's some other minor changes in there. I think there's an incorrect reference to a state statute in there, and this technical change that's proposed will correct that as well. So that's a quick rundown of the various charter changes. Deb, if someone wants to learn more about these or some of the other things, where can they look for some additional information?
Oh, thank you, Rick. Yeah, anybody can go on to the town website, as Eric mentioned earlier, and that's at town.williston.vt.us. Copies of the town report will also be available at the town hall anytime, 8 to 4:30 at 7900 Williston Road. Copies of the town report can also be picked up at town meeting. There'll be plenty there for everyone. Or you can call or email us 878-5121, or you can email me at dbeckett@willistonvt.org, and we can send out a town report to you. And pretty much all of the detail information for the budgets and all reports of all the departments are contained in that town report.
Deb, there's also a flyer that's going out shortly that has some of this information as well.
Absolutely. There's a summary flyer for the town as well as the school that'll be coming out in next week's issue of the Williston Observer. So look for that insert.
Great, thank you.
So it's my turn to more or less wrap up this presentation. So remember the important dates of March 4th for our town meeting that starts at 7 o'clock at the Williston Central School Auditorium. And the following day, on March 5th, voting at the National Guard Armory for Select Board and other positions that are up for election, the town budget, and also on the special articles that we've just been talking about. Following the town meeting on the 4th, there will be an information meeting held at the same location at the Williston Central School to talk about the budget, the bond vote, and the charter changes, which you'll be able to ask questions and get more information. So I encourage all of you to learn more about the budget in the various articles that we're proposing on the ballot, and the Select Board is asking you to support the changes that we have approved. Rick?
So Terry, there's couple things I want to make a plug for since we have an audience here. One is an event that we've scheduled for April 10th. There's been a lot of concern in the community about substance abuse, particularly among our young people. And the news recently has focused a lot on opiates, but really alcohol, tobacco, and more recently cannabis have been in the news. And those are substances that are more likely to be abused by our young people. And this is concerning. Particularly minds of young people are more susceptible to being changed by the abuse of substances. And this can affect people later in life. And so we want to have a community discussion about this and really talk about things that might have an impact to prevent the abuse of substances amongst our young people. And there are examples around the country and around the world where programs have been successful. So I think as a community it would be good to learn about those and see if there's a way we can actually implement some programs that would have that. So I encourage everyone to attend this meeting. The bigger the turnout, I think the more impact it will have and the greater chance of succeeding in moving towards programs that will prevent abuse of substances by our young people. The other thing I wanted to give it a little pitch is a program that Erik's been involved in. It's called What's Up Williston, and it's a monthly program about a variety of different community topics. Erik, why don't you mention what some of the shows have been about, and particularly the one that's coming up?
Yeah, we've looked at a number of topics in town. We've explored things. We've looked police department. I sat down with the police chief, Patrick Foley. We've talked about fire rescue. We had a wellness episode in January. There's a number of topics we explore every month, and it's we've done the show for since last summer and continuing to look at new topics. Rick and I will be taping our next episode that will kind of delve deeper into the budget process. We presented an overview today, but there's a lot of pieces to arrive at these final numbers. So we're going to take a closer look at that process to inform everyone in the community how exactly that works and what that looks like.
Well, thank you, Erik. And that pretty much wraps up our presentation, and I'm hoping that people take the time to learn about our budget and budget process. A lot of time and effort goes into it. It starts in September, really, and doesn't end until the voters vote on it in March. And of course, then we start the process all over again. So we encourage everyone to get out and vote and support the town budget and various articles, including the bond vote and the various articles that are involved with our town charter change.